The twin suns had almost dipped below the rocky horizon when Jace returned to camp. The air was cooling quickly, carrying the crisp scent of alien dust and the faint tang of the nearby river. He dropped the last bundle of wood beside the fire. Pit and glanced toward the small landing craft resting under the shadow of the cliffs. The day had been long, but the mission was far from over. He could still hear the distant hum of the ship's power core, steady and reassuring. After days of crossing dangerous terrain, they had finally reached this valley, a place hidden enough to avoid patrols and quiet enough to hear trouble coming. Jace crouched beside the fire, striking a spark to light the grill. The flames rose, licking at the metal bars, ready to cook the strips of meat they had traded for at the last settlement. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. He didn't turn. At first, the sound was too light to be threatening, and there was only one person it could be. Zira, the alien girl he had rescued 3 days ago, stepped into the firelight. Her green skin caught the glow, making her look like a sculpture brought to life. Her silver hair, damp from washing at the river, clung in loose strands around her face. A white towel was wrapped snugly around her, covering her from chest to knees. Jace reached into the crate beside him and pulled out another towel, tossing it toward her. "Here," he said. "Dry off before the wind gets colder." She caught it easily but did not move to use it. Instead, she stared at him with a curious tilt of her head, her bright eyes fixed on his face. The fire crackled between them, its light flickering over her features. "You give me this," she said slowly, as if testing the words. "Because you think I am cold?" Jace shrugged. "Because it's practical. You're wet, the night's coming, and it's the only thing I have that'll help." She looked down at the towel in her hands, running her fingers over the fabric like it was some rare treasure. Her expression shifted from confusion to something softer, almost unsure. On her world, generosity was rare. The war had hardened her. People and simple kindness often hit a price. She lifted her gaze again, studying him as though trying to find the hidden reason behind the gift. "Humans," she said quietly, "are strange." Jace smirked faintly. "You're just figuring that out now?" She didn't answer right away, but her eyes lingered on him with a depth that made him shift slightly under the weight of her stare. The wind picked up, swirling dust through the camp. Jace turned the meat on the grill, the scent rising into the cool air. Zira stepped closer to the fire, the towel still clutched in her hands. Her damp hair caught the flame's light, shining like silver threads. She finally draped the towel over her shoulders, pulling it close. "Where I come from," she said, "you do not give without expecting to take." "Not ever." Jace looked at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Then maybe that's the difference between us. I give because I can. Because it doesn't cost me anything to make sure you're not freezing." Zira's brow furrowed slightly, as if the idea itself was difficult to grasp. She glanced at the grill, then back at him. "And if I have nothing to give you in return?" Jace poked at the fire, his voice steady. "Then you keep the towel in the warmth, and that's enough." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the night settled in the low hum of the ship, the distant call of some unseen creature, the quiet crackle of fire. Zira finally sat on a low crate across from him, still wrapped in both towels now, watching the flames. "You are not like the others I have met," she said softly. Jace allowed himself a small smile. "Good. I'd hate to be predictable." The meat sizzled over the fire, sending a rich aroma into the cool night air. Jace flipped each piece carefully, keeping the heat even. Across from him, Zira remained seated, her bright eyes reflecting the flames. She still had the towel pulled around her shoulders, her damp hair slowly drying in the warmth. The quiet between them was comfortable, yet charged with something unspoken. "You said you rescued me," she began, her voice steady but curious. "But why? You could have left me where I was." Jace didn't look up from the grill. Because you would have died there. Zira tilted her head. Many humans would have walked away. Jace met her gaze briefly. Not many humans. His tone carried no arrogance, only fact. She considered his words for a moment, then leaned slightly closer to the fire. Do you know why I was there alone? Jace shook his head. I figured you'd tell me if you wanted me to know. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. Cautious, that is good. She shifted her gaze to the night sky. I was being hunted by my own people. Jace raised an eyebrow but stayed silent, letting her continue. There are factions among us, she said. Some believe in peace with other races. Others believe only in control. I spoke against the war, and they called me a traitor. When they came for me, I ran. She looked back at him. And that is when you found me. Jace nodded slowly. Then maybe we were both in the wrong place at the right time. A feint. Rustle came from the rocks beyond the camp. Jace's eyes snapped toward the sound, his hand moving to the rifle beside him. Zira noticed and followed his gaze. The noise stopped, replaced by silence so deep it pressed against the ears. Jace rose to his feet, scanning the shadows. Stay by the fire, he said. Zira tightened the towel around herself but didn't argue. He moved toward the edge of the camp, the firelight fading behind him. The rocky ground crunched softly under his boots as he searched for movement. The ship stood silent in the background, its hull gleaming faintly under the moons. Jace's senses sharpened, every muscle ready. Then, from behind a boulder, a small creature darted into view. It was no larger than a dog, its eyes glowing faintly. It froze, stared at him for a moment, then bounded away into the darkness. Jace lowered his rifle slightly and returned to the fire. Just a scavenger, he said. Zira's shoulders relaxed, but her eyes still searched the shadows. Here, even the smallest creature can kill if you're careless, she warned. Jace sat back down, his gaze still sweeping the camp's edge. Then we'll both keep our guard up. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks into the night air. The smell of the cooked meat filled the space between them. Jace pulled the grill aside and handed her a piece on a small plate. She accepted it with both hands, studying it before taking a cautious bite. Her eyes widened slightly at the taste. This is good, she admitted. Jace smirked. I'm full of surprises. She chewed slowly, as if savoring each bite, before setting the plate down beside her. Do humans always share food this way? She asked. Jace shrugged. Not always. But in my experience, a meal shared builds trust. Zira looked at him thoughtfully. Then you wish to trust me? Jace met her gaze. I think I already do. The question is, do you trust me? She didn't answer right away, her eyes dropping to the fire as if the flames might hold the truth. When? She looked up again. There was something different in her expression. You gave me warmth, food, and safety without asking for anything in return. That is rare. Jace leaned back slightly. Maybe where you come from, not for me. The night wind shifted, carrying the scent of the river and the distant cry of some nocturnal predator. They both glanced toward the sound but didn't move. The fire between them burned steadily, its light holding back the darkness. The fire had burned low, its glow a warm circle in the cold night. Jace added a few more pieces of wood, watching the sparks twist upward before vanishing into the darkness. Zira sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the flames, the towel still draped over her shoulders. The night air was sharp, but neither of them seemed eager to leave the fire's comfort. Jace broke the silence. You said you were hunted by your own people. Are they still looking for you? Zira's eyes shifted to him, the firelight catching in her bright irises. If they believe I am alive, yes. If they think I am dead, they will forget me. Jace leaned forward slightly. Which one do you think it is? She hesitated, then shook her head. I think they know I live. The weight of her words settled between them. Jace understood what it meant to be hunted, to know that somewhere out there, someone wanted you gone. "Then we'll keep moving," he said. "As long as we stay ahead, they can't touch you." Zira studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. "You speak as though this is your fight too." Jace's voice was steady. "It is now." A sudden gust of wind carried the scent of smoke from the grill into the night. Jace frowned, glancing toward the horizon where the mountains rose like dark teeth against the moons. "Something's wrong," he muttered. Zira tilted her head. "What is it?" He pointed toward the ridge. "No wind from that direction, yet I smell smoke. Means someone's making a fire out there." Zira's expression tightened. "Could be travelers." Jace shook his head. "Could be scouts." He rose, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "Stay here. Keep the fire low." Zira stood too, her staff in hand. "I am not staying behind if there is danger." He met her gaze but didn't argue. They both knew she wouldn't be left out of a fight. They moved together toward the edge of camp, their steps silent over the rocky ground. The ship loomed behind them, its hull faintly gleaming under the moons. They climbed a low ridge and peered over it. Below, in a shallow valley, a small fire burned, its light spilling over 3 figures in dark armor. The sight made Jace's jaw tighten. "Hunters," he whispered. Zira's grip on her staff tightened, the teal glow along its length flaring. "Faintly, they found me." Jace scanned the scene, noting the position of each enemy. "They're too close. If they spotted our campfire earlier, they'll be here soon." Zira looked at him. "Then we strike first." He considered it for a moment before nodding. Quiet and fast. "We can't let them call for backup." They descended into the valley, moving from shadow to shadow. The hunters were focused on their fire, speaking in low, harsh tones. Jace crept up behind the first one, his rifle held like a club. In one swift motion, he struck the back of the hunter's helmet, dropping him to the ground. Zira moved like a flash, her staff sweeping in a precise arc to crack against another's side, sending him sprawling. The third hunter reacted quickly, drawing a blade that glimmered under the firelight. He lunged at Jace, who twisted aside and caught the attacker's arm, forcing it upward. The blade clattered to the ground. Before the hunter could recover, Zira's staff struck again, knocking him off his feet. The valley fell silent, except for the crackle of the small fire. Jace stood over the fallen hunters, breathing evenly. "We can't stay here now. If they don't report in, more will come looking." Zira wiped the dust from her staff and nodded. "Then we leave before the sun rises." They turned back toward the camp, moving quickly but keeping to the shadows. The thought of more hunters tracking them was enough to keep their pace steady. When they reached the fire, Jace kicked sand over it to snuff the flames. The warmth vanished instantly, replaced by the cool bite of night. "Pack what you can carry," he said. Zira moved to gather her few belongings, her movements quick and efficient. The ship's ramp lowered with a soft hiss, ready to take them away from the danger that had found them again. The ship's engines hummed softly as Jace guided it over the barren expanse. The night was beginning to fade, and the first pale light of dawn spilled across the horizon. Zira sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes scanning the terrain below. Neither spoke for the first hour, the silence broken only by the quiet hum of the systems and the occasional ping of the navigation console. Finally, Jace broke the stillness. "We can't go to the next settlement. If the hunters have patrols there, we'll be trapped." Zira nodded, her gaze still fixed on the map display. "There is another place, remote. Few know it exists, but it is not safe in the way you hope." Jace glanced at her. "Define safe." She met his eyes for a brief moment. "A place where they will not follow, but only because even they fear it." Jace kept the ship steady as she input new coordinates. The navigation display shifted, plotting a course through jagged mountains toward a narrow canyon. "What's in this place?" he asked. Zira's voice was calm, but her grip on the console tightened. "It is a sanctuary for those who have been cast out. Outcasts, exiles, criminals. Some will help us. Others will try to kill us." Jace smirked faintly. "Sounds like my kind of people." They flew in silence for a while longer until the mountains rose sharply ahead. The peaks were dark and craggy, their tips shrouded in thin clouds. Jace dropped the ship lower, skimming just above the ridges. The shadows made the landscape feel heavier, as if the air itself carried a weight. Zira's voice cut through the quiet. "We will have one chance to land without being noticed. If they see us first, they will fire." Jace nodded, adjusting the thrusters as they approached the canyon entrance. The gap between the cliffs was barely wide enough for the ship to pass. He tilted the wings, guiding them through with precision. The rock walls closed in around them, the sunlight fading until only thin beams cut through the narrow space. Zira leaned forward, her eyes locked on the scanner. "Almost there," she said. The canyon opened suddenly into a wide basin, its floor dotted with makeshift shelters, old ships, and scattered fires. Figures moved between the structures, their shapes varied, some humanoid, others not. Jace circled once before landing near the edge of the camp. The moment the engines powered down, eyes turned toward them. Zira rose from her seat. "Stay close to me, speak little. Listen more." Jace unstrapped and followed her down the ramp. The camp's air was thick with the smell of smoke, fuel, and unwashed bodies. Creatures of different shapes and sizes watched them with suspicion. Some whispered in tongues Jace didn't understand, while others simply stared. Zira walked with a steady pace, her posture confident but not challenging. Jace kept one hand near his rifle, his eyes moving constantly to track every potential threat. A tall figure stepped into their path. Its skin was a mottled gray, and a jagged scar ran down one side of its face. "Zira," it said in a rough voice, "you should not be here." She didn't flinch. "We need shelter, Core, just for a short time." The figure glanced at Jace, its expression unreadable. "And him?" Zira's tone was firm. "He is with me." Core grunted, then stepped aside. They were led to a small structure on the far side of the camp. Inside, the walls were patched metal, and a single dim light flickered overhead. Zira closed the door behind them. "We can rest here, but not for long. The hunters will not stop just because we came to a place they avoid. If they learn we are here, they will still come." Jace dropped his pack in the corner. "Then we make sure they don't learn." For the first time since they landed, Zira allowed herself to relax slightly. She sat on a low bench, her towel now replaced by a dark cloak taken from the ship. "You have risked much for someone you barely know," she said. Jace met her gaze evenly. "I didn't save you because of who you are. I saved you because it was the right thing to do." Her eyes softened, but her voice remained steady. "Then I hope you are ready for what comes next." The camp was restless by the time the second night fell. Fires burned low, casting shifting shadows across the ragged shelters. Jace stood at the doorway of their small room, scanning the narrow pathways between the tents. Every movement in the darkness drew his attention. Zira sat inside, her staff resting across her lap, her cloak wrapped around her shoulders. She had not spoken much since they arrived. Finally, she broke the silence. "Core has agreed to let us leave at first light, but he warned that someone here may have already sent word of our arrival." Jace stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Then we move faster than the message does." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I can guide us through the eastern pass. Few know the route, and fewer survive it." Jace smirked faintly. "Sounds like our best option." They slept in shifts, waking often to the distant sounds of arguments and the occasional burst of laughter from the camp's central fire. When the first pale light touched the canyon walls, they were already packed and ready. Kor met them at the edge of the camp, his expression grim. "Go now," he said, "and do not look back." Zira gave him a small nod before leading the way toward the narrow path between the rocks. The eastern pass was steep, its walls towering above them like jagged teeth. Loose stones crunched underfoot, and the air grew colder as they climbed. Jace kept his rifle ready, scanning the shadows for movement. Zira moved with the ease of someone who knew the terrain well, her staff occasionally tapping the ground to test its stability. "We must reach the ridge before midday," she said. "The sun will make the path too dangerous after that." They were halfway up the slope when the first shot rang out. A blast of red energy struck the rock beside Jace, showering him with fragments. He dropped low, searching for the source. Figures appeared at the base of the pass hunters, their weapons already raised. Zira's voice was sharp. "Keep moving." She spun, her staff striking the ground to send a shockwave rolling down the slope, forcing the attackers to scatter. Jace fired a short burst, covering their retreat as they climbed higher. The hunters returned fire, bolts sizzling past them. Zira ducked behind a boulder, motioning for Jace to do the same. "We cannot outrun them like this," she said. Jace's eyes narrowed. "Then we make them stop chasing us." He glanced at the rocks above and spotted a section of loose stone and sand balanced on a narrow ledge. Together, they moved into position. Zira climbed higher, using her staff to pry at the ledge while Jace kept the hunters pinned down with suppressing fire. With a sharp crack, the rocks gave way, tumbling down the slope in a roaring cascade. The hunters scrambled for cover, several disappearing beneath the slide. The path below was buried in seconds, blocking pursuit. Zira dropped back down beside Jace, breathing hard. "That will buy us time." They pushed on, the slope growing steeper until at last they reached the ridge. From the top, the view stretched for miles, rolling dunes, jagged mountains, and in the far distance, the faint shimmer of a river. Zira pointed toward it. "There. If we reach the river, we can follow it to the outer territories. They will not dare cross into that land." Jace adjusted the strap on his rifle. "Then we move." The descent was faster, though no less dangerous. Loose gravel slid beneath their boots, and the wind tore at their cloaks. By the time they reached the valley floor, the sun was high, painting the landscape in harsh gold. They paused only long enough to drink from their flasks before setting off across the open ground. Every step took them farther from the hunters, but also deeper into unknown territory. By nightfall, they reached the river. Its dark waters moved swiftly, carrying the scent of distant forests. Zira knelt to fill her canteen, her reflection rippling in the current. Jace stood watch, scanning the opposite bank. "We made it," he said quietly. Zira looked up at him, the faintest smile touching her lips. "For now, but they will not stop." Jace met her gaze. "Neither will I." The moonlight turned the river silver as they began their journey along its edge, side by side, ready for whatever came next.